Hello, and welcome to the Fear Channel, a channel with regular broadcasts telling the most chilling of urban legends, ghost stories, and forays into the darkest corners of the human mind. Those faint of heart or prone to night terror should proceed at their own risk. Tonight's story is the 1941 Missouri UFO Crash. While the incident in Roswell, New Mexico remains one of the most iconic and popular early UFO crash stories, dozens of other UFO sightings and crashes took place well before that time. Take the case of the UFO crash in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, for example. This story made it to the public by way of Charlotte Mann in 1984. Charlotte was the granddaughter of one Reverend William Huffman, a priest in the Cape Girardeau area at the time of the incident. He was called out to the site of the crash under the impression that an airplane had downed. When he arrived, he found anything but. The following are Charlotte's own words about her knowledge of the photograph and the incident. I saw the picture originally from my dad, who had gotten it from my grandfather, who was a Baptist minister in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the spring of '41. I saw that picture and asked my grandmother at a later time. She was at my home fatally ill with cancer, so we had a frank discussion. She said that grandfather was called out in the spring of 1941 in the evening around 9 to 9:30, that someone had been called out to a plane crash outside of town, and would he be willing to go to minister to people there, which he did. Upon arrival, it was a very different situation. It was not a conventional aircraft as we know it. He described it as a saucer that was metallic in color, no seams, did not look like anything he had seen. It had been broken open in one portion, and so he could walk up and see that. In looking in, he saw a small metal chair, gauges and dials and things he had never seen. However, what impressed him the most was around the inside there were inscriptions and writings, which he said he did not recognize, but were similar to Egyptian hieroglyphics. There were 3 entities, or non-human people, lying on the ground. 2 were just outside the saucer, and a third one was further out. His understanding was that perhaps that third one was not dead on impact. There had been mention of a ball of fire, yet there was fire around the crash site, but none of the entities had been burned, and so Father did pray over them, giving them last rites. There were many people there, fire people, photographers, and so they lifted one up, and 2 men on either side stood him up, and they stretched his arms out. They had him up under the armpits. As I recall from the picture I saw, he was about 4 feet tall, appeared to have no bone structure, soft looking. He had a suit on, or we assume it was a suit. It could have been his skin, and what looked like crinkled, soft aluminum foil. I recall it had very long hands, very long fingers, and I think there were 4, but I cannot swear to that. My grandfather, upon arrival, said there were already several people there on the scene, 2 that he assumed were local photographers, fire people. Not long after they arrived, military just showed up, surrounded the area, took them off in groups separately, and spoke to each of them. Grandfather didn't know what was said to the others, but he was told, "This didn't happen. You didn't see this. This is national security. It is never to be talked about again." My grandfather was an honorable man, being a preacher. That's all that needed to be said to him. And so he came home and told the story to my dad, who was there, and my grandmother, and my uncle. Now my mother was expecting at the time, so she was off in the bedroom. My sister was born May 3rd, 1941. So we are assuming this was the middle to the last of April, and he never spoke of it again. But about 2 weeks later, one of the men who had a personal camera that he had hidden in his shirt pocket approached grandfather and said, "I think someone needs a copy of this. I have one, and I would like you to keep one." So that's how it came about that grandfather had the picture to begin with, but he never spoke of it again. The other people seemed to be very intimidated and very frightened and paranoid. There are also other key people who have confirmed Charlotte's story, including her sister and father. The living brother of the Cape Girardeau County Sheriff in 1941, Clarence R. Shade, has also come forward. He remembers hearing the account of the crash, yet does not have many details. He did recall hearing of a spaceship with little people. There are also fire department records of the date of the crash. This information does confirm the military swearing department members to secrecy, and also confirms the removal of all evidence from the scene by military personnel.